everyone, and welcome back to SFF180. Thomas here, your host as always. Thank you so much for joining me. And it is that time again. Time to look at the anticipated releases for science fiction, fantasy, and horror for 2024. A new year is almost upon us. Crazy, I know, but as you know, what I do on my channel is I do 3 videos for anticipated releases at the end of each year. One for science fiction, one for horror and fantasy. And today we are looking at science fiction titles for 2024. The horror video will come on Wednesday and the fantasy video will come on Friday. And for the science fiction list, I have 38 titles. That I think is a record for me. So we're going to get through these, but of course, I first always have to clarify that release dates are highly tentative, subject to change without notice. Books can get pushed forward, pushed back, pulled off the release schedule altogether, and then some books are just rumors, wisping in the air, and they never actually seem to come out, although they get announced over and over again. I've done my very best to vet this list to make sure that there is a very, very solid chance most, and hopefully all of it, are books that we will see in 2024. So, without further ado, open up another tab to your Goodreads and get ready. Here we go. Anticipated science fiction for 2024. We kick off early on January the 9th with this book from Angry Robot, 13 Ways to Kill Lulabelle Rock. The author is Maud Wolfe, and this is described as Blade Runner meets Killing Eve. It is set in a near future, where the rich and famous have the ability to duplicate themselves. And in this story, the 13th duplicate of actress Lulabelle Rock is tasked with assassinating all of her predecessors. And if the math is mathing here, it sounds like it includes the original. And on the 16th, we have 3 titles to look out for, starting with Machine Vendetta by Alastair Reynolds, coming out from Orbit. This is the 3rd Prefect Dreyfus novel. Kind of a, far future deep space, cop stories, basically. And in this one, when one of Dreyfus's old colleagues is murdered, he has to wonder if his involving her in a past investigation into one of his biggest adversaries ended up putting a target on her back. And then coming up also on the 16th of January, we have a new book by Aaliyah Whiteley from Solaris. This is 381. It is set in the early 24th century, and it looks like it's a story about the power of literature to speak to us across vast gulfs of time, basically. So a very similar theme, I guess, to Station 11. Rowena Savalas is a historian and a curator of early 21st century internet archives. Now, when she discovers an unusual story originally posted online in the year 2024 about a young woman on a kind of a vision quest, she isn't sure if it's fact or fiction. And as Rowena seeks to unravel the story's deeper meanings, such as the oddly recurring number 381, she finds her life of curation opening up into a life of unpredictability and self-discovery. And then, rounding out January 16th releases, we have a new book by Ray Naylor, who made a very extraordinary splash with his debut book, The Mountain in the Sea, a couple of years ago. And this is a Tor.com novella called The Tusks of Extinction. It's another story, I guess like his novel, about human and animal interaction. In this one, the digitized consciousness of a murdered Russian scientist who is an expert in elephant behavior is installed into the brain of a genetically revived mammoth, where she must keep the herd alive long enough for the species' population to take hold. But exactly why did Moscow revive mammoths in the first place? Now, on the 23rd, we have, once again, a busy day, 3 books, starting with, from Tor, Exordia by Seth Dickinson. This is a science fiction debut by the author of the Masquerade fantasy trilogy, and it is about Anna Sinjari, a refugee, a survivor of genocide, disaffected office worker, who has a close encounter with Srin, a many-headed serpent alien on the run from her own past. Srin and Anna are inexorably dangerously drawn to each other, and their contact reveals universe-threatening stakes. And also that day, from Tor as well, Kinning by Nisi Shawl. Now, this is the very, very long-awaited sequel, I think 8 years out, to Shaw's acclaimed debut novel Everfair. And it continues the stunning alternate history where bark cloth airships soar through the sky, and colonies claim their freedom from imperialist tyrants. But can Everfair continue to serve as a symbol of hope, freedom, and equality to anti-colonial movements around the world, or will it fall to forces inside and out? And last but not least on that date, the first novel from the Namo Award-winning Motswana author Tlotlo Samase. I'm very fascinated by this. This looks incredible. Womb City is set in a cruel futuristic surveillance state where bodies are a government-issued resource. It's a genre-bending African futurist horror novel, blends The Handmaid's Tale with Get Out in an adrenaline-packed cyberpunk body-hopping ghost story exploring motherhood, memory, and a woman's right to her own body. Wow. Okay, now I know it says horror story, ghosts, and all of that, but then it also has that strong futurist cyberpunk element, so I decided for this video I was going to lean into the science fiction elements of it rather than the horror, but it looks like it's going to appeal to fans of both. Now, moving ahead, on February the 20th, another busy day with, you guessed it, 3 titles. And the first of these is Cory Doctorow's The Bezel. Now, this is his second Martin Hinch novel, following Red Team Blues, which I have finished and have a review ready, as well as my interview with Cory. I'm very, very overdue editing that and putting it up, so I should get on that. But The Bezel is a seething rebuke of the privatized prison system that delves deeply into the arcane and baroque financial chicanery involved in the 2008 financial crash. It's a high-stakes thriller where the lives of the hundreds of thousands of inmates in California's prisons are traded like stock shares. And then also on the 20th, we get Twice Lived, the new novel by Jomo West from Tor.com Publishing. Jomo West's first novel was called Face. And this one is a story about displacement. It looks like that it's about 2 versions of the same young woman who exist on parallel Earths, which cannot be accessed except by people known as shifters. Canna and Lily shift back and forth between both Earths until they are faced with having to prepare their families and their friends for the day when they experience their final shift. And then finally on the 20th, we get a book called Vanjie's Ghosts by Paul DeFilippo. Now, DeFilippo is a veteran of the science fiction field, but mostly as an essayist and a critic and a reviewer. He writes reviews right now for Locus. But this is a new novel. It's a multiverse tale about Vanjie, a nonverbal 3-year-old girl who discovers she has the ability to observe, quote, ghosts, which are actually versions of herself from an infinite number of multiverses. And she soon cultivates the ability to jump into these other timelines to escape adults who hope to harness her powers for their own gain. Now moving ahead 1 week to the 27th of February, 3 more books. I swear it's a pattern. But the first of these is Moon of the Turning Leaves. It's a new book by Wabgashig Rice. He is an acclaimed Indigenous Canadian author, and this is a standalone literary thriller set in the same world of his previous book, which is the award-winning post-apocalyptic novel Moon of the Crusted Snow. And it's about a scouting party led by Evan Whitesky, which ventures into unknown and dangerous territory to find a new home for their close-knit Northern Ontario Indigenous community more than a decade after a world-ending blackout. And then next up, on the 27th as well, The Other Valley is a debut literary speculative fiction novel by Scott Alexander Howard. And this one is being promoted towards fans of David Mitchell and Kazuo Ishiguro. It's set in a town that is bordered on either side by versions of itself. On one side, there is a version 20 years in the past, and on the other, 20 years in the future. Our heroine is a young girl who realizes that 2 visitors from the future side of her town, whom she was not supposed to know about, are grieving parents who have come on a mourning tour. They have come to observe their son in the past, where he is still alive, and this son happens to be the boy she loves. So can she keep this secret from him, or is she going to break the town's cardinal rule about not revealing anything from either side? Very intriguing. And then wrapping up, February 27th, we have an Angry Robot title from Daniel Polanski. This is called Tomorrow's Children. It's a high-octane post-apocalyptic romp. So I guess very different in tone than the Wabgashig Rice novel, I suppose. This one is set in the ruins of Manhattan, generations after a noxious cloud called the Funk because what else are you going to call it if you're living in Manhattan? Has separated the island from the rest of the world and mutated the population, but something new has come to the island, the first tourist in centuries, and an uneasy equilibrium is about to shatter. Moving on, there is one title on March the 5th. It's Welcome to Forever by Nathan Tavares. It's his second novel for Titan Books. And in this one, we follow Fox, a memory editor able to create real life in the digital realm. But following a devastating terrorist bombing carried out by none other than the pioneer of that technology, who has now become radicalized, Fox must rebuild his life and marriage from reconstructed fragments that survived the blast. But his world is changing and unreliable and echoing around itself over and over, with hints of revelations about his own past when he knew this terrorist personally. And then on the 12th, 2 books. The first of these is Jump Knots by Hao Jingfang, the Hugo Award-winning author of Folding Beijing, and of course her first novel from Saga Press, which was Vagabonds. And this is a gripping science fiction thriller in which 3 unlikely allies attempt a desperate mission of first contact with a mysterious alien race before more militaristic minds can take matters into their own hands. And as we always like to see, this one is translated by Ken Liu. And then also on the 12th, we have a novella by Primi Mohammed, The Siege of Burning Grass. It's from Solaris. As 2 empires wage war, an imprisoned pacifist named Alifret is forced by his government to infiltrate one of the enemy's flying cities and agitate their local anti-war protesters into an uprising. If he succeeds, he could potentially help end the war, but is it worth betraying his own principles by obeying his captors, let alone betraying the trust of like-minded war resistors? And then on the 19th, this is Floating Hotel by Grace Curtis. Second book by Grace Curtis. Her first book was Frontier from Solaris Press, I believe. And this one is geared towards all you fans of everything cozy under the sun, right? It is set aboard the Grand Abiona Hotel, home of the finest food, the sweetest service, and the very best views the galaxy has to offer. It travels from system to system. It's the last word in suborbital luxury, and an absolute magnet for intrigue, with more than a few mysterious secrets of its own. For instance, no one seems to know who is actually piloting it. Now, on March 24th, we have from Tachyon Press. It's a queer, noir, cyberpunk novella called These Fragile Graces, This Fugitive Heart. The author is Izzy Wasserstein. In mid-21st century Kansas City, when our trans heroine Dora's ex-girlfriend Kay is killed, and everyone at the commune is a potential suspect, Dora knows she's the only person who can solve the murder, and her investigations uncover more disappearances, a strange new drug on the streets, a twisted conspiracy, and a looming corporation war. Moving into April, on the 2nd, from Tor, we have a new collection, A View from the Stars by Liu Xuzhen. And this is out pretty much just in time, just after, I believe, the scheduled release of the Netflix adaptation of Three Body Problems. So I guess Liu Xuzhen will be having a moment then. Anyway, this is just a new collection by the Three Body Problem superstar, featuring both fiction as well as essays and interviews collated from over the past 30 years. Now, on the 9th, we get a book by a guy who is also very much having a moment right now. Mal Goes to War is the new novel by Edward Ashton. Now, Ashton's first book, Mickey 7, which was followed by Antimatter Blues, a duology. Mickey 7 has been adapted into a movie called Mickey 17. I don't know why they added 10 to his number. We'll find out, I suppose. But by none other a filmmaker than Bong Joon-ho, who directed Parasite, swept the Oscars a few years ago, and then a ton of other movies over the years. He's an amazing filmmaker, so yeah, what a feather in your cap indeed. But anyway, in Mal Goes to War, Mal is a free AI, indifferent to the ongoing war between augmented federals and puritanical humanists. But then Mal finds itself trapped in the body of a cyborg mercenary, once the humanists cut off access to the digital info space, and now Mal is responsible for the safety of a modded young girl the mercenary died to protect. On April the 16th, we have a new novella from Tor.com by Sofia Samatar. I don't think anybody would have had it on their bingo card that Sofia Samatar's new book would be a Tor.com novella. But of course, she is the highly acclaimed author of books like The Secret History and A Stranger in Alondria, and is back now with The Practice, The Horizon, and The Chain. And this story is a critique of class and the carceral state embedded within a space adventure. All of it described as very Ursula Le Guin, about a young boy forced to toil in the lower decks of a deep space mining ship, who is brought suddenly to the upper decks to be granted higher education alongside the children of the elites. But the woman who has brought him here, known only to him as the Professor, has her own proverbial chains to break free of, and together they embark on a transformative journey. So this sounds not unlike An Unkindness of Ghosts by Rivers Solomon a few years back, at least similar in terms of themes. So looking forward to that, of course. And on the 23rd of April, we wrap out the month with The Wings Upon Her Back. This is also from Tachyon Press. The author is Samantha Mills. And it goes like this. Xenia was a teenager when she ran away from home to join the mechanically modified warrior sect. She was determined to earn mechanized wings and protect the people and city she loved. But as a loyal warrior in a crisis of faith, she must fight to regain her place and begin her life again when questioning the events of her past. So now we're moving into May with a new book from Tor.com Publishing by Andrea Hairston. And I love the look of this one. It's called Archangels of Funk. The water wars have scrambled the world. Invisible darknet lords troll the internet, solidifying their power, while Cinnamon, her 3 circus bots, and 2 dogs work with a community of farmers, motor fairies, and wheel wizards to provide housing, healthcare, and education for flood refugees. As Cinnamon confronts threats from all sides, she must determine how best to honor her elders and her history while building a future for herself and her charges. So that sounds like it's going to be some terrific character-driven stuff, and it is out on the 7th of May. Now, moving ahead, we have a very, very busy day on May the 21st. 4 titles, starting with the new book by Victor Manibo. Now, this happens to be, and I find this very entertaining indeed, this is the second 2024 science fiction novel set on board a mystery-shrouded high-end space hotel. This one is pitched as Knives Out in space with a parasite twist. So there you go. A decades-old murder looms over the glamorous clientele of the luxurious space habitat Altair, playground of the privileged, while an unforeseen threat percolates in the service corridors. The guests are about to experience the hospitality they deserve. I don't know, did everybody decide that Triangle of Sadness was their favorite movie from last year or something? I don't know, but I'm all about rich, privileged people, ending up in frickin' horrible situations. Let's do it. So, all right, Escape Velocity on the 21st. And also, a new book by Jack Campbell. It's called In Our Stars, and this is the beginning of an all-new series by the man who has spent pretty much the last of, good 15, close to 20 years now, writing stories in his Lost Fleet military science fiction series. But this is all new, and this one seems like it is much more adventure-focused, with even some hints of a love story. In the year 2180, when the Earth is destroyed in a war launched by extremist factions, Lieutenant Celine Genji, genetically engineered with partial alien DNA, is hurled through a warp in space-time 40 years into the past. And with the help of Lieutenant Kyle Owen, Celine now has a chance to change the future and save the Earth. But altering history could put her own existence at risk, and Kyle isn't sure a world without her is worth saving. Well, I'm sure they'll work it out. Next, on the 21st, we have the new book by Stuart Turton. Who's the author of The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, or maybe it's 7.5 deaths. Who's counting? I don't know. But this book is called The Last Murder at the End of the World, and it's a kind of clever take, I have to admit, on the locked room murder mystery. Set in a bleak future where only one island, home to 122 villagers and 3 scientists, has been left untouched by a deadly fog that has wiped out the rest of the planet. And yes, I know we just touched on Tomorrow's Children. A lot of books now really kind of very, very close in their premises. I don't think this fog is called the Funk. I think this is just a fog. But anyway, one of the scientists is now found murdered, and the security system keeping the fog at bay has gone down, leaving only 92 hours to solve the murder and save the island. But the collapse of the security system has also wiped everyone's memories of the night of the crime. And finally, on the 21st, we get something that looks very exciting to me. This is a high-octane post-climate disaster novella from Tor.com Publishing by Sui Davies Okungboa, Lost Art Dreaming. Now, Suyi is the author of the Nameless Republic series, which is currently in its second volume from Orbit. This is a story described as a mashup of Snowpiercer and River Solomon's The Deep. Off the coast of West Africa, decades after the dangerous rise of the Atlantic Ocean, survivors live inside 5 partially submerged immense towers, originally built for the wealthy. And of course, the rich live at the top, while everybody else is crammed into the dark, fetid floors below sea level. But there are also those who were left for dead in the Atlantic, only to be reawakened by an ancient power, who seek vengeance on those who offered them up to the waves. Now, for this next one, we come to the first book on this list where I'm going to have to tell everyone, take it with a grain of salt, consider it highly, highly tentative, but it is the new novel from the Finnish SF superstar Hannu Rajaniemi. It is Darkome, a biopunk thriller set in a future following a bioterrorist attack that resulted in a fierce government crackdown on Darkome, a normally peaceful biohacker community of DIY genetics enthusiasts where the terrorists unfortunately have chosen to set up shop. Now they are driven underground, but their services are desperately needed by a man trying to save his daughter's life. But his quest to save her might put him right in the terrorists' crosshairs. Now we are moving into June, and we are getting the first of 2 books just on this list alone by a man who has got to be the single most insanely prolific author in all of SFF right now, and that is, of course, Adrian Tchaikovsky. Service Model from Tor.com is described as Murderbot meets Red Shirts. And I cannot think of a single sentence pitch that is better crafted to make the heads of science fiction readers just pop off their necks like champagne corks. So very well done. Nice. All right. So what is this one about? Well, when a domesticated robot gets a nasty little idea downloaded into its core programming, they murder their owner. The robot discovers they can also do something else they never did before. They can run away. Fleeing the household, they enter a wider world they never knew existed, where the age-old hierarchy of humans at the top is disintegrating into ruins, and an entire robot ecosystem devoted to human well-being is having to find a new purpose. Sometimes all it takes is a little nudge to overcome the limits of your programming. So there you are. If you want a great story about class struggle told through robots, well, here you go. It sounds like it's going to be fun and hilarious. And also on the 4th of June, I do not usually add too many YA or young adult, middle grade, books for kids, as it were, on these lists of mine, but I put this one on here because it is by Yoon-Ha Lee. It is Moonstorm. In a society where conformity is valued above all else, a teen girl training to become an Imperial pilot is forced to return to her rebel roots to save her world in this adrenaline-fueled sci-fi adventure, perfect for fans of Iron Widow and Skyward. So, yes, I have no doubt that the author of the Machineries of Empire trilogy will turn out yet another really exciting book for young readers. Now, we're moving ahead onto the 11th of June, where there are 2 titles. And the first of these, from Angry Robot, is a new book by Tim Pratt, the author of the Axiom trilogy and the Marla Mason urban fantasies from back in the 2000s. Some of my favorite urban fantasies ever. This is The Knife and the Serpent, and this one has a pretty complex story, difficult to summarize, involving a young Bay Area woman named Tamsin, who discovers her murdered grandmother was in fact not an Earth native at all, but an oligarch from a highly advanced adjacent reality called the Nye Space Continuum. Tamsin's path will eventually collide with that of Ivy, a secret agent for an organization that protects the Nye Space Continuum from those who would exploit less developed worlds. And also on the 11th, the new book by Yumi Kitase, The Stardust Grail, from the author of this year's acclaimed Book of the Deep Sky. Now this one sounds like a huge treat for fans of the alien artifacts trope. That would be me. Maya is a retired art thief who once specialized in returning artifacts to the alien civilizations they were stolen from, until a disastrous mission ended her career. But now she is drawn back into that life to find a powerful object that could save an alien species from extinction. Except no one has seen it in living memory, and they aren't the only ones hunting for it. Maya's quest will end up casting a dark shadow over her own team, and in choosing to save one species, could she be gambling the survival of humanity? Moving into July, on the 9th, This Great Hemisphere is the new novel by Matteo Ascaripour. Now, he was the author of a 2021 novel, his debut, called Black Buck, which was a trenchant satire of late-stage capitalism and the tech industry. So yes, he is a lit fic author, and I will be very honest, have been many, many times when lit fic authors have decided, I'm going to dip my toe into genre, and the results have not been good. But other times, they've been very, very good, right? Like Black Leopard, Red Wolf, and some others that I can think of. So I am hopeful that this will be one of the good ones. It's a story about the nature of power set 500 years in the future, in a world where some people are born invisible and relegated to second-class citizen status. A young invisible woman named Sweetmint embarks on a search for her brother, who is the prime suspect in a political murder. Now, on July the 23rd, from Meerkat Press, I do not ever want to completely miss any of the smaller independent presses in these lists, but this is a new book by Joel Dane, who was the author of the Cry Pilot military science fiction series that came out from Ace Books. This book is Ragpicker, a dystopian odyssey in which two characters, the Ragpicker, who describes himself as, quote, a scholar of abandonment and a curator of decay, along with a young girl named Yasmini, wander a lush, deserted earth in search of sanctuary, and in particular the Ragpicker's lost husband. Yet, the signals and static of the previous age echo in the Ragpicker's mind and whisper in the girl's dreams, drawing them toward the gap between map and territory while offering precious hope. Now, August the 6th, we are getting what has got to be, without question, the single most anticipated science fiction novel of the year, and this is, of course, The Mercy of Gods, the new book by James S.A. Corey, a.k.a. Daniel Abraham and Ty Frank. This one starts a new universe. It's a completely new series, and it's about a group of humans living on a distant world for so long that they don't recall their own history. And then they are attacked and captured by the Carricks, a ruthless alien race of conquerors, who appear to be meeting their match in a new, great, and deathless enemy. Now, Dafydd Alcor is a junior scientist among the humans who must figure out how to understand and manipulate the Carricks. But will this put him in the position of being humanity's savior or betrayer? Either way, the price of failure is extinction. The following week, on August the 13th, we get what looks like a very cute and funny little novel by Al Hess. His second novel from Angry Robot Books is Key Lime Sky. Now, this is described as a witty SF romp about Denver Bryant, who is autistic and non-binary, and a huge lover of pies, who once had a popular blog all about pies. Dude loves pies. Great. But one night, Denver witnesses a UFO. You see the connection there? Flying saucers, probably love it. A UFO literally explodes over his town, but none of the locals say they noticed anything. With the help of handsome bartender Ezra, who seems like the only person who believes him, Denver revives his blog to an all-new enthusiastic audience as he searches for answers to the exploded UFO. But the more they learn, reality itself starts to warp, and soon the town won't let them leave. So that one just sounds like a blast, and I'm looking forward to it. Getting towards the end of the list now, moving into September. Now, on the 10th, I have a title that is another one I'm going to have to tell you, probably very tentative, but I am seeing listings appearing on all of the online bookstores, all the big ones, so maybe it's a safe bet that this one will at least come out, if not on this date, close to it. But for now, it is listed as September the 10th. And it is Polo Stand, the new book by Neil Stevenson. It is said to be the long-awaited sequel to Seven Eves, as well as the first book in something called the Bomblight trilogy. And it looks like it furthers the story of the descendants of the original Seven Eves, 5,000 years after the destruction of the moon and subsequently the Earth. And as you will recall, if you read Seven Eves, their story was begun in the final third of that book, and to me it has always had a strangely kind of out-of-place, unfinished, tacked-on feeling to it. So perhaps these books will now bring out part of the saga and give it the substance that it has always needed, and now take this future into interesting directions. But we will find out more, I guess, very soon. And last but not least, and I have drunk so much water during the recording of this video, I've probably, more than I do in a given week, because, God, do this much talking, the mouth gets dry. But it's worth it, because on the 17th, the second book on this list by Adrian Tchaikovsky, I told you there was another one coming up, and this is Alien Clay. And it is described as Tchaikovsky's most ambitious science fiction novel yet, which is a pretty bold claim. I mean, how much more ambitious can the guy get? Good Lord. But this one is set on the planet of Kiln, where the tyrannical mandate keeps its prison colony, and for inmates, the journey there is always one way. One such prisoner is Professor Arton Dogdev, xenoecologist and political dissident. Soon after arrival, he discovers that Kiln has a secret. Humanity is not the first intelligent life to set foot there. In the midst of a ravenous, chaotic ecosystem are the ruins of a civilization. I love, once again, alien artifacts, alien civilizations, favorite trope, all over this. But who were the vanished builders, and where did they go? If he can survive both the harsh rule of the Camp Commandant and the alien horrors of the world around him, then Arden has a chance at making a discovery that just might transform not only Kiln, but distant Earth as well. Now, Orbit US lists this one as a trade paperback release, strangely. But if you don't want to wait that long, and you want a nice edition, well then Orbit UK has a hardcover release listed for March the 28th. And what a time to run out of water. Okay. All right, well that does it for me. That's it. My list of 2024 most anticipated science fiction. Remember, as I said at the beginning of the video, the horror list will be Wednesday, fantasy on Friday. And which of these are you most anticipating for 2024 yourself? Which books in science fiction that I did not list are you also anticipating? Because every year I know that there are always like book twos in trilogies and other series, sequels, follow-ups, things like that I don't usually put on these lists unless I want to make a specific exception, because most of the time I do try to concentrate on new and original stuff that is debuting and starting up, or standalones or what have you. But whatever it is in science fiction that you're looking forward to in 2024, please let me know in the comments. If you want to talk about the horror and the fantasy that you are anticipating for next year, please wait for those videos and list those books in those comments. All right. But if you enjoyed watching, again, thank you so much. Hit that like button, share the video far and wide with all of your SFF reading friends, and above all, please sub. That is how the channel grows. You can also support the channel at my TeePublic store and at my Patreon, where recruits into Rick's Army occasionally get little perks like early access to some of my videos, but mostly I use the Patreon money to pay Matt Olson, my amazingly gifted and talented channel artist who does all of my incredible thumbnails for me, animations, what have you. He has been a collaborator with me through the entire 10 plus years of this channel now, and I'm very proud to be working with him. So thank you all if you have chosen to be a Patreon for that additional support. I also want to thank all the rest of you for being the very best viewers in all of BookTube, and until I see all of you next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and happy reading.